Hey, what's going on, guys? Dan from Spilling the Tea, a Pico podcast. Today, I was joined by Miranda Caldwell from Core Asset Real Estate Group. Miranda is a real estate agent who has a specialization in marketing. That's right, she does marketing on a whole new level. She's really popular, I want to say, on TikTok. So she's got a couple 100,000 followers and a lot of engagement on her posts. And she jumps into what how that kind of happened. And we also talk about the importance of staging in this type of market, and she goes through some of her tips for staging a property. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. It was great chatting with Miranda, even though we had some technical difficulties. Hopefully, you can still kind of follow along with this one. And grab a tea, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks, guys. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to Spilling the Tea, brought to you by Pekoe Mortgages. This is a podcast where we look to interview movers, shakers, hustlers, people that are inspiring, have inspiring stories, and help to push the envelope on what's possible. I am your host, Daniel Johannes, and I'm a mortgage broker, but I'm also a business owner. I've created multiple startups, including a graffiti removal business. I've done loose leaf tea, I've done kombucha, juice bars, you name it. So I've got some experience in this, and I'm looking forward to these conversations that I have. If you like it, please comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. Hope you enjoy it. Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks for joining us on another edition of Spilling the Tea. It's a Pico podcast. Today, I am joined by Miranda Caldwell. Miranda is a Toronto real estate agent whose client service expertise transcends the conventional real estate experience. Miranda is also a seasoned digital marketing strategist and certified Google ad specialist with a diverse background in marketing, advertising, hospitality, and event management. Thank you for joining me today, Miranda.
Thanks for having me. So happy to be here.
Yeah, it's awesome. So I want to kind of jump in a little bit into your journey into real estate. I'd love to kind of get and I'm sure a lot of my viewers too would like to get a sense of, like, how did you get into real estate? Like, what got you down the path of real estate?
I was obsessed with homes basically as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
So I was actually going through model homes when I was in high school with my friends just to like hang out, take pictures, do the MySpace thing. Um, and
Oh, wow, that's a
then
blast. MySpace.
yeah, yeah, it, I was probably actually Facebook. I can't remember if it was actually MySpace, but yeah, I would go in model homes because I loved looking at houses. And then I was working in surveying after university, and a friend of mine actually listed my family's condo. And I was like, hey, I can do that. So I went and got my license and just have been working in real estate ever since. And I'm really happy I did. However, I do wish I started sooner because it's super fun.
Oh, right on. So when did you start then? Like, how many years ago?
I actually quit my marketing job without anything else lined up in, I think that was 2018. So I haven't been an agent for too long, but I was officially registered in March 2019. It took me 6 months of full-time studying.
Wow. And then a year later, we hit lockdown. So that must have been an interesting time to get into real estate, right? A lot of changes there.
I mean, yeah, you would think, but it actually kind of was crazy. So it was a very busy first year, and then the pandemic was busier in real estate than a lot of people were expecting, which I thought was interesting. But it was a great, well, it wasn't a terrible time to get started, aside from everything being scary in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely made people sort of shift how they, how they dealt with buying and selling real estate. I know, especially on the financing side, people were very comfortable sitting down across from their banker, right, going into a branch, and you really couldn't do that during lockdown. So, people that were maybe a little bit more traditional or old school in sort of how they did these transactions had to kind of shift if they wanted to get in or out of the market. So, yeah, definitely an interesting time to get into real estate. So, is there a certain type of real estate you focus in, condos, or I know you mentioned earlier you stay away from pre-construction?
I don't stay away from it. I just don't pretend to be an expert.
Right on.
I
Yeah.
prefer to refer to people who do that frequently. Mind you, my family's purchased most of the condos that they ever owned pre-construction, so I'm familiar with it, but, you know, it's just not my,
Yeah.
expertise, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting. Pre-construction is kind of like its own beast because I feel like, I've done plenty of pre-construction in Toronto over the years, and you see sort of the shift from pre-construction. The prices were, there was a lot of inherent appreciation that you would get on these properties, and now it's almost like, it's very tough to really understand and figure out what is a good pre-construction purchase. I know a lot of people have questions, right? Are these developers going to be around and by the time the development is complete? So yeah, it's an interesting type of product, that's for sure. And I know you being so prominent on social media channels such as TikTok. I can't believe you've got like over 200,000 subscribers, and guys will post a link to her channel below. But your TikTok presence, obviously you can't really get into pre-construction too much, but you you really get into some of these more interesting houses and builds across the city. One of them, I think it had almost 2 million views, and it was an 8-foot wide container home, like a 3-story container home house. That was pretty interesting. And I think that's there's probably a lot of interesting types of properties you've seen. Can you speak up maybe a little bit on that? Like what kind of houses you look at?
Yeah, I mean, just to touch on what you were saying about pre-construction, I'm a very physical person, so to not be able to, like, physically stand inside the place that, I'm helping people buy and sell, I prefer to be there in person and, see the space and be able to touch things. So that home, yeah, I just look for, like, unique homes, and that was obviously one of them. I know it was featured in the news quite a bit. And the listing agent was awesome on that. It's actually quite unique. It has a basement, which I didn't expect it to have.
Is it actually a shipping
But
container?
it is, yeah. So it's brand new. So people think, they're cheap to buy, and I think they're probably cheaper to buy used, but these are all brand new shipping containers, which I guess aren't as cheap.
Mm.
Obviously, you're paying for, like, the land in Toronto and stuff with the listing price, but I also think, the seller probably has an understanding that it's really unique. So it's sometimes, they list for a price that they would be willing to sell it for, not that, then maybe they don't want to sell it, kind of thing. So yeah, but it was 3 shipping containers. They said they had it like all architecturally like joined together, and there's a basement. So I was very, very surprised with that, actually.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of crazy, and it's unique, and I would imagine that it definitely gets a lot of publicity. But what's your opinion on some of these unique homes? Because sometimes you'll see a home that's been converted, like maybe it was an old school or an old church, or it's got some sort of interesting history. Do you think that works against or like for a listing?
I think I love the unique stuff of homes, and when you ask, like, the type of real estate I do, I love homes for that reason, because even when they are kind of cookie cutter, they can still be very unique. I find it's a lot more frequent for, like, freestanding properties versus condos to be, just interesting and have really interesting stories. But it really depends on the property. I think when they don't work with the charm, it can be kind of a wasted opportunity, because I think that's what's the coolest part about some of those homes is having that story and that history. And, if you can work with those materials and not just like make it a complete blank slate inside, it's nicer that way. But if, there's a lot of times in videos where it's like a century home and it's been just stripped of all its character, and you see that a lot in the comments that people aren't a fan of that. But I always try to keep it positive.
Yeah, yeah. So do you, like, when you're going in to kind of take a look at some of these homes and give everyone a tour of it, do you just kind of like scour the MLS to find what's new and what looks exciting, and then just kind of reach out and say, hey, can we get an inside look?
Yeah, so I have a list of keywords that I use and I look for specifically certain types of features. Home features I find are often in some of the more interesting homes that I look for those keywords specifically, and then it helps me go on the right track. But I pretty much look at all the ones that come out every day anyway. So
Right on. Okay, so when it comes to listing homes, right? Let's say someone hires you and they want you to list their home. What are your thoughts on staging? I think I know some of your thoughts on staging, but obviously earlier this year, uh, January, February, March, you could pretty much put a sign up and the house was sold before you finished tapping in that sign. So in this market, I think it's more important than ever. But can you speak a little bit on that? I know I had heard in a prior interview, you had mentioned the five senses. So maybe you can kind of jump into what the five senses are too.
yeah, I mean, I try to stage. I've been sort of, is conceptualizing staging versus cold staging. So there's, that cookie cutter type of staging where you can just like take like a couch, a photo, an accent chair, the things that you need for the formula and put it in the space because it shows people, how the space can operate with furniture in it. That's what I consider cold staging because there's no like trying to like generate an emotion in that. I think that's a bare minimum. I think it's definitely necessary and better than nothing. But when you take it to the next level and really think about the space and making it cohesive and using art that makes people feel something in a very curated way, that's what I like to consider warm staging. And, that's what really gives visitors to the property that warm and fuzzy feeling that is going to make them want to spend more money rather than,
Right.
just paying like what it takes to get it, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
it's really making people fall in love with the home.
Yeah, of course. And I feel that too. Like sometimes I would go into open houses and like I don't have that eye for staging. Luckily my wife does, which is kind of nice. But
Your background
I
looks
would look
pretty
at
good.
what's that?
Like your background looks pretty good. Mine's a disaster, but your
Yeah.
setup
Do
is
you
like
think
nice.
I staged this? No, it was well, I did some of it, but really, what I've noticed, and this is from my untrained eye, but sometimes you go into open houses and you can tell that it's either a budget staging, they try to do it themselves because they've looked at a couple magazines or something, or a friend told them that looked really nice and they didn't want to hurt their feelings, or it's just it just doesn't work. It doesn't flow with the space. So do you hire stagers, or obviously you've got an eye for this? Like, do you provide the input, or what if someone comes to you and they're like, yeah, you know what, I'm good, I don't need it staged because I'm living in it and we need the space? Like, what do you do in those situations?
Yeah, I mean, it's by basis. I think staging makes an incredible impact. So, in my sort of expert real estate opinion, I would always recommend staging. And I've been very lucky to work with people who also prioritize making their space look as good as possible because it will have a about people I do hire stagers. And I've been really lucky to work with some awesome people who can take like a kind of feature piece of art that I want to use and they'll really roll with it and play that into the accessories that they're using and just make it, like sometimes it's just a key piece that really anchors the space and they're really able to work with that. So I got very lucky and I really appreciate those people if they're watching.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I find like you attract the type of people that you want to work with, and it's it definitely helps when you're kind of on the same page. I'd imagine there's some people that just kind of hand you the keys and say, go wild, just don't break anything, and do your best to stage it. And in this sort of market, it's so important, I think, that you try and get a leg up, because obviously you can speak on this a little bit better than I can. But how's the market doing, inventory wise? pricing, days on market, we're noticing that it's, this is not the market we were in this time last year, right? So it's definitely important that we try and get a leg up, especially as a seller in this market. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about that, Miranda. What are you noticing there downtown Toronto where you're at?
I think
Actually,
it really
sorry,
depends on the neighborhood and in this market especially.
I was just going to say, Miranda, before we
Oh, go
start,
ahead.
I'm going to edit this right now because I noticed it's a little choppy. I'm going to switch my network to another Wi-Fi network to see if this helps things. So just hang tight for 1 second.
Yeah. I think it might be mine too.
All right, we're back. This seems a little bit better. Yeah, you were just like pretty choppy, so I wanted to kind of cut it at that point. Anyway, we'll pick up. My last question was kind of like what's going on in the market there.
Yeah. Oh, so I was saying in the market, if you're looking at it, I think you really need to look at a micro market and not just look at the big picture because every neighborhood almost is doing different things. But yes, as a whole, it's down. I feel like the buyers are really understanding that things are slow and everyone is really taking their time these days. Um, I had a listing last week, for example, where I was calling every showing we had and the buyer I think that just really goes to show sellers in this market that buyers are really taking their time and they recognize that they didn't have this opportunity back in February and they're making the best of these moments, which they should be.
Mm-hmm.
But it's sort of a shifting mindset for people, and you have to be mindful of that. And that's when staging is ever more important because you're not going to stand out otherwise. And obviously, price is going to be the biggest thing. But if you're not standing out one way or another, it's going to be a very slow moving market for you.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there was a lot of people that kind of, they went up against the sidelines and they said, well, hold on a second. Maybe we wait a little bit. There was the wait and see approach about a year ago because they just couldn't get in. They couldn't, get the place they were looking for, or they compromised on either location or must-haves in a property. But then now we've sort of have that additional pressure, where we have inflation. So the cost of everything's gone through the roof, groceries, fuel, interest rates. And with all of that, it's definitely put some downward pressure when it comes to buying. Like just for example, last week, Bank of Canada, right? They came together and I'm sure you've had people that reached out to you to say, hey, well, what's going on? How does this affect me? How does it affect my pre-approval? And ultimately it has a real world effect on what people can afford. So it's kind of put people on the sidelines that are just kind of like, well, let's see where things go. And with more added inventory on the market, it's become a little bit different. I think it's more of a balanced market is what I've been told. But we'll see what happens in the next few months and where things go there. But as far as a seller goes, what are your top tips besides staging? What else can they do possibly to kind of get a foot up on getting the best audience for their listing? Obviously, I would imagine don't take those photos yourself.
Yeah,
probably not a good idea.
I try to I talk about this frequently, but so excuse me if I've said this before and you've heard it, but I think your first photo is the most important when you're listing a property. So picking that selectively because the first they're getting an email alert and there's one photo to represent your property. So if you're using for a condo, as an example, if you're using a building shot, you're not representing your unit specifically as well as you could be. And I think that's an area where I get very confused why people don't use an interior shot for condos. That's definitely an area of opportunity for sellers. Price at the end of the day is going to be the first thing though, because that's the first filter that every single that's in location. So if you're not getting aggressive with that price and recognizing that maybe if you're looking for a higher price and if you're looking to test the market, then maybe this isn't the market to do that. Then you might be sitting for a lot longer than you should be. But
Yeah, it's interesting you speak about that, because I've noticed that, and I'm sure a lot of people that just, even if they just peruse, the listings casually, you shake your head at some of them, because you'll see, someone has taken a photo and it's upside down, or it's poor lighting, or it's in the middle of the night and they took an exterior shot, and or you can see them in the mirror, and you just, we actually, my wife and I played a game where, how they do the virtual tours sometimes in some of the houses. So we were looking at properties out west, and I don't know, it was Kelowna or something. And so we started to some of these virtual tours where you could spot the homeowners in some of the, when you would like pan and do the 360, you kind of spot them around the corner. There was one house where literally it was like, "Where's Waldo?" And so she would like be like, "Hey, check in the basement. You're gonna see him behind what." So it was, but yeah, it's surprising how many listings don't put a priority on sort of that first impression, right? First impressions mean everything, and it's no different when it comes to listing your home. So I think that's super important. What are your thoughts? I know some realtors have that strat. They've been utilizing the strategy of terminating a sale and then putting it back on to kind of test the waters on pricing. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you have to follow the seller's directions and work in their best interest. So, there's obviously a reason behind people doing that. And on the flip side, as a buyer's agent, buyer's agents need to be looking at the address history to really know whether you should or shouldn't. I think, at the end of the day, we're all just trying to work in the best interest of our clients. And if that's something that they ask for or suggest, then that's really, what they're looking for. And it's going to get more eyes on the listing realistically.
Yeah. It's interesting. I spoke to an older gentleman who's been a realtor for like decades, and he had mentioned to me, he said one of the reasons that this was the strategy that I guess has been employed is because back in the day when you would sort of terminate and then relist a listing, it would be faxed to you, the new listings for the day, and I guess you would get a new sheet of the new listings that have come out. So he said, that was one way that a realtor could get it sort of like front and center again, top of the page, so to speak. So, but it's I think a lot of people are trying different strategies right now to just try and figure out what's, how do we get our house sold for top dollar? My neighbors, I have a bunch of neighbors, so I'm not going to point anyone out, but we do have neighbors that had listed for sale by owner, and I feel so bad for them because it's literally been on the market for 2 months now, right? And they keep decreasing the price, but it's an older house. They've been in there for a very long time, but they really want to save sort of that dollar without having to list it with a realtor. But this is where something like the services that you provide come in so handy, because you could go in, declutter, stage it properly, throw those open houses. And I think more than ever, it's really important that if you want to get top dollar, I mean, you're going to have to use professional services. So
at the end of the day, it is a service. So if it's not something people are willing to pay for, then
you get what you pay for.
Yeah, it's a service. Like I physically am in properties and organizing and coordinating, and it can be a lot more work than people think. Especially like considering the fact that's not their full-time job, and this is our full-time job. So
100%.
From regular business hours, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, you go, I mean, even weekends. I mean, you get up from a dinner, I'm sure, and go help with packing boxes and stuff. I've seen it firsthand. So, and you mentioned too, Miranda. So you're also a homeowner and a landlord. So this is great, because some people that are either looking to get in as an investment property, maybe you can speak to, is this the first time you've jumped into being a landlord, or maybe give us a little bit of information on that side.
Yeah, so I actually, my family has been landlords for as long as I can remember, for us back in university. So I saw firsthand like both the tenant and the landlord side. And they were always really good landlords, painting, cleaning. They let us paint the walls pink, Christmas gifts, that type of thing. And it was always about a personal relationship, and just really that human connection. So for me personally, that was my first time being a landlord. And it's not just a business transaction, which I think there are some people where it is that for them, but um, it can be a really rewarding experience if you take it from like both sides of the coin, and you're a nice individual.
Oh yeah, 100%. That goes such a long way, being able to just be a nice person, especially, if you're a landlord and you're taking care of
Yeah.
people. Oh, I think I lost you for a second there, Miranda. Oh, you're back. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's so important because,
Yeah.
small things like, for example, I have a gentleman that he is a professional real estate investor. He's got like 100 doors to his name. He's been doing this a long time. And I said, well, what's the key to you having such a great track record? Like a lot of the folks that rent from you, they just, they're really happy. And he's like, well, yeah, treat them with respect, with dignity. Some people, they go through hard times. And he had mentioned too, something that was really interesting is for some of the families, he was actually doing, it was kind of like uh, not a rebate, but he would provide sort of like an incentive if the kids wanted to do like an after school program. It's like, okay, well, we'll give you like whatever X amount of dollars off or towards it at the end of the year or something like, it was more of a gesture because we want to see your kids sort of excel and so forth. I thought that was a really great little gesture. And he's like, honestly, it's a little amount, but it goes such a long way. And it's great because when the tenants do move out, they usually leave the place in, fairly good condition. So, but if someone's looking to kind of get in as, let's say they can't buy right now and they need to rent. I know Toronto, when I was renting a place in Toronto, I actually was out, where was it? It was Humber Bay, right by Lakeshore Parkland there. I rented a little place. And it was bloody expensive. And people were actually in bidding wars when it came to trying to find, even a place to rent. So how's it looking right now in Toronto as far as the rental market?
It's tricky for a lot of people right now. I think the situation is the same with multiple offers going in on properties. So the best advice that I'm giving to tenants these days is to start as prepared as possible and think of all the things and the questions you would want to know if you were renting your space to someone, just to make them more comfortable, because the more transparency you can provide up front, the less like back and forth and icky feelings people are going to get. And just being as prepared as possible is really the best you can do.
That's good advice. Definitely. Yeah. Some people just go in and it's, the shotgun approach too, and just trying to find a place to live. And especially right now, right? We're in September. We've, at least here in Kitchener-Waterloo, we got a ton of people coming in and looking for affordable housing. And not only that, but people that come here that are international students, their entire family comes and they'll stay for, maybe a few months out of the year, and they need places too. So that's good advice. Let's talk a little bit, Miranda, market wise, right? I want you to get your crystal ball out because 2023 is on the horizon. We're not sure, obviously, where interest rates are going to be, but it definitely looks like it's trending upwards. There's talks of, I don't know if you've noticed, but few days ago, the numbers came out for unemployment, and we're up third month in a row, higher unemployment. So people are losing jobs. I think we lost 40,000 jobs in Canada in the last month. So this is one of the leading economic indicators when it comes to, are we going to get into a recession? That, higher interest rates, higher cost of living, and then global turmoil, which, we're seeing all over the place. So there's a very good likelihood we might be going into a recession. With that being said, what do you think is going to happen with real estate next year?
I mean, did anyone predict what was going to happen in the pandemic? I do think, compare other areas of the GTA, historically, Toronto has been a bit more insulated just due to the demand of people wanting to live here. And there's really just not enough houses for the amount of people who want to live here, which is, I think, the strain that we're seeing on the rental market is because of that. Immigration is still increasing. There's still jobs that people are being drawn to the city for. So I don't know if that's going to be enough to sustain the prices not coming down even more. But I think if you compare it to outside of, the greater Toronto area, you're still going to see less of a blip than you would, farther away from the city where there's less infrastructure, less restaurants, less stuff that people want to be around.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Toronto, it's definitely a bubble in the sense that the shocks aren't as felt as extreme. Like out east, house prices are just dropping quite quickly, and in Toronto, it seems to same thing with Vancouver. It's a little bit more isolated. So I think we've definitely got that on our side. And you did mention something that is really important: is our immigration policy. We have a strong immigration policy. Everyone needs a place to live, and if they're not going to rent, they're going to buy. And most people that are renting, the plan is to get into home ownership. So I think the inventory struggles that we have is probably going to play into things regardless of where interest rates are. It's just a supply and demand thing. But maybe we circle back and see how things pan out, in a few months. But anyway, any thing you want to kind of leave our viewers here as we kind of wrap things up? Any tidbits, words of wisdom? I'm obviously going to link to your social media on TikTok. Are you active on Instagram, or do you have a YouTube channel, anything like that?
I have a YouTube channel, but I rarely post there. I should be posting there more often. I would like to. I'm most active, I would say, on TikTok and Instagram.
Cool. Okay.
But yeah, I love talking about design. So, if anyone wants to chat about that, I'm always into a fun conversation about that. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for joining us. And I'll leave your contact information below. Guys, if you want to talk to Miranda, if you need help finding a property, or you just want to talk to her about design, feel free to reach out to her. And again, thank you, Miranda, for joining us on this episode.